You close your eyes and find yourself weightless, adrift in a darkness that is not empty, but full of quiet whispers of dust. Tiny grains, older than any world you know, float around you like a silent snowfall. You reach out, but they slip through your fingers, brushing your skin with the memory of distant fires. These particles are not just dust. They are the remnants of stars that lived, burned, and fell apart so that something new could grow. Breathe slowly. Let your mind settle into this drifting field. Each speck glows faintly, reflecting light from stars you cannot see, yet feel. You sense that every grain has traveled for millions, even billions, of years. Some were born in the deep bellies of red giants, forged in the fusion fires where elements came alive. Others burst outward in violent supernova, scattering metals and minerals into the black sea of space. You float through this cosmic ash as if through a story older than language. The dust gathers, too patient for your hurried sense of time. It clumps, guided by the soft tug of gravity, by the static dance of electric charges. Over years that pass like gentle breaths, these tiny motes bump, stick, spin together. What seems so fragile, so easily scattered, begins to build something solid. You see it in your mind's eye, a faint haze that thickens into clouds that swirl into disks that cradle newborn worlds. The vastness does not feel empty now. It feels fertile, alive with seeds of planets, moons, and comets yet to come. You drift alongside them, a witness to their slow gathering. You imagine your fingertips brushing the edge of a forming pebble, no larger than a grain of sand at first, yet destined to grow into mountain-sized rock. One day it may join others, merging under the gentle push of unseen hands. Listen to the silence here. It is not cold or lonely, but full of promise. Inside each grain is carbon, the building block of life, iron to strengthen worlds, oxygen that will one day breathe life into oceans and air. You realize you are not separate from this drifting haze. You are born from it, too. The calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, the carbon that weaves your cells together, all once drifted through the void, carried by winds of dying stars. Imagine the journey. A star swells in its old age, pushing its outer layers away. Like a sigh, the dust drifts outward, crossing the distances between stars, falling through interstellar clouds. Light from younger suns nudges it along, radiation presses on its back, tiny collisions steer its course. Over ages, the grains gather together, drawn by gravity's patient pull. From dust, rocks form. From rocks, worlds awaken. You feel this process inside your breath. Inhale, you draw in the ancient story. Exhale, you let it go, carried on currents that never truly end. You drift in the soft cradle of this dust cloud, turning slowly in a darkness that glows like memory. The vast silence does not press in on you. It lifts you, as if you, too, are light enough to float forever. Far ahead, you sense how these drifting clouds meet other clouds, mixing dust with gas, hydrogen, helium, traces of more exotic elements. They swirl under gravity's gentle command, shaping spirals and knots. You picture the birth of a solar nebula, a wide, thin disk that spins around a brightening point of light. This is how your sun began, a swirl of gas and cosmic dust collapsing into fire and form. Some of this dust never joined the sun. It stayed in the disk, bumping, sticking, melting together until pebbles grew into boulders, boulders into planetesimals. Collisions could be violent, But here, in your drifting dream, they are slow dancers. A touch, a bond, a merging embrace. Over millions of years, gravity turns chaos into structure, disorder into orbits, scattered dust into new worlds. You drift past frozen lumps that will one day become comets, holding ancient ice and trapped carbon in their cold hearts. You imagine them slumbering at the edges of the solar system, waiting for the gentle nudge that will send them inward, trailing tails of dust and gas. Their return reminds planets that they are part of a larger family, all bound by the same cosmic dust that once drifted freely. You let your body relax into this knowledge. The universe is not in a hurry. Every mote moves at its own pace, shaped by forces too subtle to see but too strong to resist. Your own life feels slower now, in step with the cosmic rhythm. You feel the comfort of belonging to something so much bigger than your own brief years. Somewhere in this drifting field, you sense other seeds forming asteroids, those rocky leftovers that never became planets but hold secrets of what might have been. They carry the purest records of the solar system's beginnings, untouched fragments of ancient dust. Scientists on Earth send machines to touch them, to taste their minerals, to read their stories in the language of isotopes and grains. You imagine yourself as one of those dust grains, spinning slowly, falling gently, guided by gravity's hand, toward a place where you might settle. You picture your soft landing on a young world, maybe Earth falling through skies that hiss with your passage, melting into droplets that feed oceans, rocks, or life itself. Your mind drifts further, wondering how often this dance repeats. Stars live, die, and cast out more dust. That dust drifts, settles, clumps, grows. New stars ignite, pulling the old dust into fresh orbits of possibility. It is a quiet cycle, recycling light and matter again and again. Nothing is wasted. Even silence has a purpose. You breathe this thought in like a lullaby. You realize that even when stars explode in furious brilliance, they do so to scatter seeds of new beginnings. You understand that endings here are just the start of another gentle drift. Each tiny grain is a carrier of hope and history, a spark, waiting to join with others to become something more. As you drift, you feel lighter than ever. The dust surrounds you, floats through you, settles in your mind like a soft snowfall. You are not separate. You are the cosmos, dreaming itself awake, one grain of thought at a time, far ahead. You sense that these drifting clouds will one day gather tighter, pulled inward by gravity, until they give birth to more than dust. They will awaken into something vast and bright, something that pulls the darkness inward to ignite new light. And within that light, more dust will swirl, more planets will form, more seeds of life will rest quietly, waiting for a chance to bloom. You drift on, carried by this endless tide of tiny particles, feeling the weight of stars in your bones and the hush of the void in your breath. The darkness hums softly with possibility. You are safe here, drifting through dust, waiting to see what will gather next, what shape the cosmos will choose to weave from these silent grains. You drift deeper, into the nebula, letting your breath match the soft rhythm of drifting gas. Around you, colors glow in silent blooms, pinks and blues, pale greens that flow like slow rivers across a black canvas. Every particle here carries a memory of something older than any world you know. You feel how dust once shed by dying. Stars gathers here again, waiting for gravity's patient pull to weave something new. Your body floats light as a whisper. You watch clouds swirl and fold into themselves, like silk drifting in water. You feel the cold vastness of this cloud cradle like a soft blanket. In this place, the universe dreams of fire but sleeps in darkness. Hydrogen and helium drift together, their atoms brushing like dancers too shy to touch for too long. Tiny grains of carbon and ice drift among them, seeds for worlds you cannot see yet. Gravity works slowly here, a gentle hand pressing gas tighter, closer, coaxing warmth from cold. Emptiness, you can almost hear it. A hush, a hum, a patient promise that nothing stays scattered forever. In the denser parts of this nebula, knots of gas form. You drift close to one and feel its pull, so subtle yet sure. Inside that knot, atoms collide. More often, the pressure grows. The hush begins to warm. Your mind drifts through the hidden layers. You imagine the faint warmth as a heartbeat, slow but certain, a sign that a star waits to be born. It will take millions of years for this knot to gather enough mass, enough courage to ignite. Yet in this hush, you understand that time is gentle here. Time does not rush. Time cradles what must grow. You reach out, though your hands are only thoughts. You feel how gravity shapes these seeds of suns, how dust and gas fold closer, heavier, warmer. Sometimes the swirling forms spin faster, pulling more matter inward, tightening the spiral, like a potter's wheel shaping clay. The spin forms disks around the dense core, future cradles for planets, moons, and rings. You drift along a swirl that might one day be a star's halo. Tiny specks of ice and carbon stick together as they orbit the warm center. You picture these specks as gentle whispers promising stone and metal, oceans and storms, seeds for everything a star's light will someday touch. In this cradle of cold dust, whole worlds wait inside tiny collisions and fragile clumps. The nebula hums with energy too faint for your ears, but strong enough to guide your thoughts. Cosmic rays pass through, stirring molecules to dance. Magnetic fields thread through this cloud like hidden rivers, shaping the flow of gas, tugging filaments into knots. You drift along these threads, feeling how invisible forces shape what will become visible light. Sometimes you catch a glimpse of starlight from faraway suns filtering through the haze, scattering colors like stained glass in a silent cathedral. This light pushes against the dust, shaping it to carving pillars and arches of gas. You watch how the bright places sculpt the shadows, how darkness gives shape to light. You understand now how stars do not fight the darkness but grow from it. In these clouds, what seems empty is full of quiet motion. Every drift of dust carries the past into the future. Every collision is a promise whispered in cold space. From death comes life, from scatter comes shine. Your breath stays calm as your mind floats deeper into this glowing nursery. You imagine what it feels like when the moment comes, when the core of gas becomes so dense, so hot, that atoms break and fuse, releasing a fire that can never be unlit. A new sun blazes awake, sending shock waves through its cloud, stirring other seeds to form or scatter. Some parts of this nebula will drift away, pushed by the newborn star's light and wind. Other parts will cling close, falling inward, growing, dense enough to feed the flame. Planets may gather here, moons may dance in quiet orbits, comets may sleep in the distant cold until a chance pull sends them inward to warm themselves. At their sun, you feel how this story repeats across the galaxy. A slow blooming of suns inside silent clouds. Each birth reshapes the dark, turning hidden dust into the warmth that will one day touch new worlds. Your thoughts wander to the edge of this glowing cradle, wondering what waits beyond this nursery of light and shadow. In the hush of the nebula, you sense how stars are not born alone but together, siblings of fire that drift apart with time but always share the same ancient dust. You drift among these seeds, knowing that the atoms warming here will shine for billions of years, their light crossing the cold void to find eyes like yours. You rest in this thought. The same dust that feeds these suns drifts through you too. The iron in your blood, the carbon in your breath, the calcium in your bones, all once drifted like this, waiting for gravity's hush to gather them close. You are part of this cloud, this endless patience, this gentle fire waiting in the dark. As you drift, you feel a subtle tug, as if the nebula itself breathes you outward, guiding you from the warm seeds of suns toward the colder realms where matter clumps in stranger ways. A soft curiosity stirs in your thoughts, whispering that beyond this cradle, larger shapes drift and pull, worlds forming not only from light, but from stone and ice, gathering rings of secrets under distant suns. You drift closer to a place where nothing seems to happen at first. Here, in this quiet pocket of the galaxy, clouds of dust and whispers of gas float through space like ancient weightless ghosts. You imagine them as soft grains of ash from a fire long forgotten. But this ash remembers its purpose. It waits for a moment to gather itself, to fall inward, to become something new. Your mind hovers at the edge of this cloud, tracing the slow dance of hydrogen and helium atoms drifting for millions of years. They are so light, so patient, yet there is an unseen hand guiding them. Gravity, gentle but unyielding. It gathers every stray particle, tugging them closer with a touch you cannot see but can almost feel in your chest, as if your own heartbeat echoes this cosmic pull. Slowly, pockets of gas grow heavier. They swirl in on themselves, forming knots where the dust thickens, like frost on a cold window pane gathering into delicate patterns. The cloud darkens, not because light flees, but because the material inside becomes so dense it hides the starlight. Beyond, this is the womb of a star, a place where darkness folds in to make its own light. You listen closely. The collapse is silent in space, but in your mind it hums with possibility. The gas falls inward, pulled tighter and tighter until the center glows warm under the pressure of its own weight. You imagine this warmth like a secret breath held deep within, a promise that someday it will flare out and touch the universe. Inside this forming sphere, the temperature rises. You drift closer still, close enough to sense that the atoms inside are trembling faster, crashing into each other in a frenzy of invisible collisions. Every bump and shake brings them nearer to a tipping point, a moment when simple gas becomes something radiant. This is fusion, but you don't need the word to feel it. You feel it in the heat that wants to escape, the light that wants to be born. Outside, more gas continues to fall inward, feeding the growing fire. Gravity presses from every side, like a comforting hand that both holds and squeezes. There is a balance here, the inward pull of gravity and the outward push of growing heat. For now, gravity wins, pulling more material into the core, building pressure like breath drawn deep into your lungs. You remember how on Earth clouds gather before rain. Moisture drifts and clings until the sky cannot hold it anymore, and then it falls. Here, too, the cloud cannot hold itself. It must surrender to gravity, must collapse to create. The falling dust does not fear its own implosion. It trusts that its end is a beginning. Time passes slowly here, millions of years by human measure, yet to you it feels like a single slow heartbeat. The cloud shrinks, and at its center the heat grows fierce. You sense it now, a dull red ember forming. Deep inside, a hint of starlight pushing back against the weight pressing in. This ember is fragile and hidden, but it holds everything the star will become. You imagine standing beside this ember, feeling its warmth brush your face. It is not yet a sun, not yet bright enough to pierce the blackness around it, but within. Atoms fuse, hydrogen becomes helium, tiny particles lock together, and with every fusion comes a burst of energy that begs to escape. Slowly, these bursts gather into a steady glow. Outside the core, a shell of gas still collapses inward, feeding the fire within. The balance shifts. The heat inside grows strong enough to push back against gravity's embrace. It is like a newborn, taking its first breath, expanding its lungs to claim space it never knew it had. The gas shell quivers at this new push, a soft struggle between gravity's pull and the fire's push. This gentle tug of war brings calm to the chaos. The core finds its balance. The pressure of heat pushing outward equals the gravity pulling inward. The star is born in this balance, a quiet lantern lit deep within the darkness. Its glow is shy at first, hidden by the dust that still clings around it. Like a blanket swaddling a newborn, you drift outside the cloud and watch from afar. The dust that once veiled the forming star begins to drift away, brushed aside by the light now pushing outward. Slowly, the darkness grows thin, and pinpricks of light peek through. What was once an invisible implosion now reveals itself. A new star glimmers, its light reaching across the black dot. In this gentle glow you sense all the stars that have come before, each one born from the same silent collapse. You understand now that stars are not born in violence, but in a quiet surrender, clouds giving way to gravity, atoms surrendering to fusion, darkness giving way to light. Each star carries this ancient softness, this willingness to change, around. This young star, some dust remains. It circles the new light like moths around a flame. These grains do not fall inward anymore. They drift, caught in the gentle tug of the star's gravity and the push of its light. They swirl into a flat disk, a thin halo of possibility. You know that inside this disk new stories wait to take shape. Planets, moons, icy comets, rocky asteroids, all of them spun from the leftovers of this silent collapse. You float through the disk and touch the grains of dust with your mind. They are warm from the starlight, but patient, waiting for the gentle collisions that will bind them together. This is how worlds begin, in the leftover light of a star's birth, in the slow embrace of dust finding dust, stone finding stone. As you hover there, you realize that this process repeats endlessly. Each star's birth leaves behind the seeds of planets. Each planet holds the promise of oceans, mountains, and maybe life that will one day look up and wonder where the stars came from. You feel that wonder now, carrying it like a soft lantern. Inside your chest, you drift back, your mind lingering on the warmth of the newborn star. Its light is faint but steady, a promise to the darkness that it will not last forever. Around you, other clouds wait their turn. Other collapses are beginning in silence, hidden from your eyes but not from your imagination. You feel the universe, breathing in and out, collapse and ignition, silence and flame. As you move away, you sense that this star's journey has only begun. Its light will burn for billions of years, feeding worlds you cannot yet see, shaping rocks and oceans you have yet to drift above. In this soft glow you find comfort. The universe folds in on itself, only to open again, always making room for something new. You wonder what comes next for this swirling disk, for the tiny grains dancing in circles. You wonder what shapes they will take, what hidden worlds lie waiting inside their collisions. And as you drift onward, you carry that question with you like a lullaby, ready to settle into the next chapter's quiet promise. You drift close to the young sun, feeling its warmth like a slow heartbeat pulsing through space. Its surface flickers and flares, a restless ocean of searing hydrogen. Deep inside, nuclear fires merge tiny particles into larger ones, releasing energy that has nowhere to stay. You imagine this glow as a secret yearning, a promise to the darkness that surrounds it, inside the sun's core. The pressure is unimaginable, crushing hydrogen atoms together until they surrender their separateness. Each fusion births a tiny spark, a photon that waits its turn to wander. But these first newborn photons cannot simply burst outward. They are trapped in a labyrinth of matter, colliding, absorbed, re-emitted a dance that can last thousands of years before they break free. You picture this light as ancient whispers, pressing against layers of plasma, scattering like seeds in shifting winds. With each collision, the photon's direction changes. Its path zigzags endlessly, yet always drifting outward. Billions upon billions of these tiny messengers push through the dense layers until they reach a place where the sun's skin grows, thin enough to let them go. At last, after millennia in the burning maze, these rays break through the surface. They leap outward, free from the pull of the sun's body. You sense their release, a sigh of warmth that spills into the cold vacuum, a golden breath brushing against the dark. From here, these photons begin their true journey, crossing the abyss, finding the frozen edges of the early solar system, and brushing the ancient dust that drifts in silence. You float with the light, moving at a speed so vast it barely makes sense to your dreaming mind. In moments, these beams will have left the sun's comforting glow behind, racing past infant planets still swirling with debris. Some rays strike rocks and ice, heating them enough to wake hidden chemicals. Others pass through thin atmospheres, scattering into colors that will someday paint skies. Many travel on, uninterrupted, until they lose themselves among distant stars. Your mind drifts to the dust, the same ancient grains you brushed against before. These tiny fragments linger far from the sun's heat, clumping together in cold shadows. The warmth from the young sun reaches them in delicate touches, stirring frozen gases awake, coaxing elements to bond in new ways. The light carries more than warmth. It brings possibility, like a soft nudge encouraging seeds to grow. In this emptiness, every ray of light has purpose. Some bounce from icy comets, sending them inward on long looping journeys that scatter water and carbon. Others reflect off specks of metal and rock, pushing them ever so slightly, nudging them closer together. Over eons, these gentle pushes help shape the seeds of planets' dust become stone. Stone becomes mountain. Mountain becomes world. Your body feels the calm patience of it all. The sun does not rush. It does not demand that its light be caught or used. It simply gives, again and again, releasing its energy to the vastness. Some light will be swallowed by planets, some by empty space, some by the black fabric that stretches between stars. Yet even lost light leaves a mark, tiny shifts of heat, subtle pushes that tilt orbits, all adding up to the slow shaping of cosmic gardens. You drift closer to the sun's outer layers now, sensing the restless storms that churn its surface. Flares leap high, arcs of plasma dancing in magnetic fields that twist and snap like invisible threads. These storms fling charged particles far into space, solar wind that sweeps out in all directions, carrying with it the sun's invisible breath. This wind shapes the edges of the solar system, forming a bubble that shelters the small family of planets within. You follow this wind as it moves alongside the light. Together they reach the edge of darkness, carrying heat, magnetism, and the seeds of new stories. In their wake, tiny grains of dust catch the sunlight, shimmering as they drift. These grains become mirrors, scattering light back and forth, softening the shadows. You watch how the darkness and the light negotiate their quiet balance, never quite separate, never quite the same. Your mind settles on one beam of light, imagining its journey from the sun's core to the frozen edge of the solar system. You see how this single photon began as raw energy in the furnace of fusion, battered its way through thick plasma, and finally burst outward to touch something cold and waiting. It is a gift given freely, a piece of the sun's fire transformed into warmth and movement far away. You wonder how many of these journeys unfold every heartbeat of the sun. Each pulse releases unimaginable streams of light and particles, a constant offering to the emptiness that surrounds it. In this quiet giving, the sun shapes what does not yet exist: future oceans on young worlds, future air thick with warmth, future eyes that will open to the dawn. Your thoughts drift with the escaping light, feeling how energy transforms when it finds something to hold it. A rock absorbs warmth, ice sublimates into vapor, molecules break and rejoin, and in this endless cycle, life finds its beginnings. From one star's patient glow, entire landscapes are painted, atmospheres brewed, oceans stirred to motion. You breathe in this slow truth: the sun's embrace is not a prison but a promise. Light escapes so that something else may form, so that frozen seeds might crack open and dream of forests, rivers, and watchers who look up and wonder where the warmth began. And as you linger here, hovering between the sun's warmth and the cold beyond, you sense the next question rising in your mind like a gentle tide. If light can escape the sun to shape the dust, then how does that dust gather its courage to become worlds of stone, water, and breath? In the quiet dark between stars, you find yourself drifting through a cloud of cosmic ash, ancient dust shed from dying suns and distant comets. Each mote drifts lazily, carried by currents of light and the soft breath of gravity. Your mind floats with them, unhurried, noticing how they shimmer like tiny promises, each speck carrying within it the memory of heat, explosion, and long cooling silence. You sense how this ash, though so small and fine, holds the seeds of continents and oceans not yet formed. Far from the noise of human life, you witness these specks brushing against each other, drawn close by the faintest pull. Static whispers across their surfaces, a gentle touch here, a patient nudge there, until they stick. Dust grows into pebbles, pebbles gather into stones, and stones drift together until they are no longer stones, but the beginnings of something vaster, the bones of unborn planets. It is a slow gathering. Gravity hums like a lullaby, weaving these tiny bodies into larger and larger shapes. You watch them spin slowly, each turn drawing in more stray grains, binding ash into a rough sphere that circles an unseen star. There is no rush here, no noise, but the soft shuffle of particles shifting and settling. You feel how time stretches out thousands of years, passing like quiet breaths, each breath pulling more dust into the embrace of this growing body. You imagine sinking your hand into this gathering place. Fine dust slips through your fingers like flour, yet beneath it lies the weight of mountains yet to rise. Iron seeds hide in this swirl, waiting to sink toward a molten core. Icy grains drift at the edges, ready to form oceans that will someday cradle storms and tides. Every fragment holds possibility, waiting to be pressed and heated and cooled into landscapes you could one day stand upon. As you drift closer, you see how collisions shape these early worlds. Some stones meet gently, embracing like old friends. Others strike hard, splintering into clouds that scatter and rejoin elsewhere. Even destruction here is part of the making. A larger rock breaks apart, its fragments captured again by the gravity of the gathering sphere. Nothing is wasted. The universe recycles itself endlessly, folding ruin into creation. In the warmth of your imagination, you sense the coming heat inside these young worlds. When enough dust and stone come together, the weight builds pressure at the center. Pressure sparks warmth. Warmth stirs molten rivers beneath the crust of rock. Slowly, heavy metals sink deep, forming cores of iron and nickel. Lighter minerals float above, becoming crust and mantle. You feel the gentle swirl of convection currents starting deep inside, the slow churn that will someday build mountains. Open rifts push continents adrift across invisible seas of stone. The cloud around you is vast, speckled with other gatherings, each one a whisper of a planet in the making. Some will grow large enough to pull in atmospheres, fragile veils of gas that hold warmth close, cradle winds, and soften the harsh touch of space. Some will remain barren stones, drifting cold and silent around distant stars. Yet even these carry hidden stories, storing minerals that might one day feed the hunger of travelers far from home. Your mind drifts further, noticing how this grand process connects to the tiniest details, how each grain of dust carries elements forged in ancient furnaces, how every collision releases a spark of warmth, how even silence is alive with motion too slow for the eye, but steady enough to build continents and carve valleys yet to be named. You feel yourself becoming part of this slow dance, your breath matching the gentle spin of rocks in the void, your thoughts slipping into the spaces between dust grains. You rest inside the patient heartbeat of the cosmos, where nothing is hurried, where centuries are soft steps in an endless waltz. Through this stillness, you imagine how life might find a foothold. Perhaps water will gather in cracks and basins, warmed by the new planet's molten heart. Perhaps minerals will dissolve, swirl, settle again in patterns that invite chemistry to awaken. From the ashes of stars and the hush of collisions, the ingredients for rivers and roots might take shape, delicate arrangements of atoms that dream themselves into cells, then creatures, then forests that breathe back into the sky. The idea soothes you that from ruin comes renewal, that from drifting specks of ancient dust come the seeds of life, waiting only for time's steady touch. You see mountains where once there was nothing but dust. You see oceans stretching where there was only ash. You see yourself, small and calm, drifting at the edge of this birth, witnessing a quiet miracle that unfolds without rush or roar around you. The cloud grows thinner as more dust finds a home in these gathering worlds. Some grains remain adrift, drifting endlessly through the dark, waiting for another chance to join a new story. You watch them spin past like soft sparks, each one a gentle reminder that creation is not a single act, but a cycle that never ends. In this place of gathering, you feel your own breath becoming part of the rhythm, in and out, like tides against unseen shores. The warmth inside these forming planets echoes the warmth in your chest. The gravity that draws stones together mirrors the pull that draws your thoughts inward, toward rest, toward dreaming, and as you drift beside this slow, steady making of worlds, you wonder quietly what these planets might hold when they wake. What winds will blow across their plains? What rivers will whisper through their canyons? What stories will rise from the dust that now floats so gently around you? You let the questions settle unanswered, knowing the next drift will carry you deeper still, toward the hidden warmth inside these new worlds, where cores spin and magma flows, shaping the landscapes that sleep beneath their cooling skins. You follow that warmth now, feeling its pulse draw you closer, inviting you to listen to the soft heartbeat. Deep within the gathering stones, ... You stand on a young world still wrapped in a haze of steam and restless fire. Beneath your feet, the ground shifts and sighs, hot with the memory of its birth. You feel the pulse of molten rock just below the surface, pushing upward in slow waves, cracking the new crust open so it can breathe. The sky above you is not clear blue, but a swirling veil of gas, ash, and drifting ice that falls softly like seeds from far away. Somewhere beyond this steaming plain, frozen bodies wander, ancient comets, icy asteroids, tiny worlds that never grew large enough to burn from within. They drift on long, looping paths, carrying water locked in crystal cages. You imagine them crossing the darkness, drawn toward this warm, glowing sphere by the quiet insistence of gravity. When they arrive, they do not whisper, they strike. And yet, even these impacts are not anger, but gift. Listen, a distant rumble shakes the young ground. You hear the echo of stone meeting stone, ice shattering into steam. Each collision is a heartbeat of change. The heat of the world's belly meets the chill of ancient ice, and between them, rivers are born. You watch steam rising in ghostly plumes where cold meets fire, and droplets condense, run together, carve channels through newborn rock. Your mind drifts backward through time's thin mist. Before this, the world was molten chaos, a sphere of liquid stone and metal, bombarded by leftover fragments of creation. Asteroids brought heavy elements, metals that would sink inward to form a core. Comets carried water, tiny grains of ice hidden within dust, waiting to melt. In this dance of ice and fire, oceans slowly collect. Vapor turns to rain. Rain becomes rivers. Rivers feed basins that one day will hold seas deep enough to cradle. Life, you kneel and touch the hot ground, feeling how solid and liquid live side by side. Volcanic vents open and close like breath. Lava spills into low places, cooling just enough to build crusts that will drift and collide again. Tectonic plates begin their slow ballet, reshaping continents before continents even have names. Beneath the crust, molten rock shifts like thick thought, carrying minerals upward in hidden veins above you. The sky flickers with the streak of another visitor, a comet trailing gas and dust like a silver cloak. It meets the atmosphere with a hiss that grows into a roar. For a moment, night turns to day, a brief blossom of fire as ice surrenders to heat. Pieces fall through clouds, splash into forming seas, bury themselves in the mud that will one day become fertile ground. You close your eyes and listen to this world breathe. The hiss of steam, the crackle of cooling rock, the sigh of vapor rising into clouds. This is no violent end, but a patient beginning. Fire does not destroy what it touches here. It reshapes, fuses, welds, fragments into a foundation. Ice does not remain untouched. It melts and mingles, turning barren stone into wet promise. Drift your thoughts outward now. You see other young worlds taking shape, some closer to the warmth of their star, where ice cannot linger, where fire rules alone. Others far away, so cold that their fires die quickly, buried under frozen crusts. But here, where heat and cold meet in balance, something unique can emerge, a place where liquid water can flow, cycle and pool in low valleys, a place where warmth keeps water soft and cold brings rain back again. Imagine a droplet falling from a newborn cloud. It strikes cooling rock, finds a crack, seeps inside. It feeds steam that rises through fissures, building geysers that whistle and hiss into the dim sky. That same water might drift back into the atmosphere, fall again, over and over, carrying minerals, wearing down mountains into fertile plains. You watch time stretch outward like a calm ocean, waves of erosion and deposition smoothing sharp edges. Your breath matches this rhythm, a cycle of warmth and chill, collision and calm. You see how life's ingredients gather here, carried in by comets, cooked by heat, stirred by impacts. Each collision that shatters rock also stirs the soup of possibility. Molecules swirl, cling together, break apart, try again. In the warmth of volcanic pools, complex chains might begin to weave. You listen for that first spark of life, though it is not yet ready to whisper its name. For now, there is only rock, water, steam, and time. And yet, within this quiet forge, the conditions settle into a gentle balance. Too hot, and everything burns away. Too cold, and everything freezes silent. Here the world stays restless, but gentle enough to hold water in its many forms. Liquid rivers, icy comets, vaporous clouds. You feel how your own body echoes this story. The water inside you once drifted through ancient space, locked in the hearts of comets and asteroids. The heat that warms your skin comes from the same fires that melt rock beneath your feet. Your breath carries vapor that rises, falls, and rises again, a personal echo of planetary rain. Stand here a moment longer. Let the warmth of the ground seep into your bones. Listen for the distant hiss of a comet's arrival. Feel how each impact shapes not only the land, but the air and seas to come. What seems destructive is also creative, a gentle truth written in stone and steam. This young world does not know yet what it will become. Its surface shifts, its crust drifts, its oceans deepen. All the while, new comets wander inward, bringing fresh ice to feed lakes and rivers. Each arrival is another soft promise that warmth and water will stay, that fire and ice will keep weaving a cradle wide enough to hold dreams. You drift upward now, carried by a hush of rising winds. Below you, the ground is still young bare, stone, raw ridges, and quiet plains waiting for the softness of air. You feel the tug of the planet's gravity, gentle yet certain, holding you close while you rise above its skin. Here thin gases gather and swirl, wrapping rock in a veil of breath that did not always exist. In the beginning, the planet's face was naked stone, scorched by the young sun's fierce light. battered by stray asteroids that brought heat and scattered dust. Volcanic vents opened deep wounds in its surface, releasing gases trapped within carbon dioxide, nitrogen, steam. You watch them rise like sighs from the belly of the planet, gathering to form the first breath. The newborn atmosphere is thin, restless. Winds shift the gases, pushing warmth here, stealing it there. You float through these invisible streams, feeling how molecules of gas cling together, drawn by faint bonds stronger than the silence of space. Each swirl, each gust, teaches the atmosphere how to hold its shape, how to soften the sun's harsh glare and cradle warmth near the ground. Your body feels the difference between stone and sky. On the ground, heat radiates away quickly into the cold void. But wrapped in air, the warmth lingers, shared and stored. The gases form a blanket too light to touch, yet strong enough to keep the planet's breath from drifting away. You watch steam become clouds, clouds become rain, rain become rivers that carve the stone, carrying minerals back to oceans that have just begun to gather in hollows and cracks. You rise higher. The air thins around you, but even here, the atmosphere whispers its purpose. Molecules of nitrogen drift past, slow dancers in an endless waltz. Oxygen, still rare now, will come later, but already this thin shroud shapes how sunlight touches the world. Particles in the air scatter the sun's harsh rays, softening day into a blue hush, a promise of shelter against raw emptiness. You sense how fragile this balance is. Without enough gravity, these gases would drift away, lost to the stars. Without volcanic breaths, there would be no supply to feed the sky. Without sunlight, there would be no warmth to keep molecules dancing close. Atmospheres live in this. Balanced stone below, heat above, and breath suspended between. Winds curl around your drifting mind, telling you stories of other worlds. Some planets lose their breath to soon lightweight gases escape into space, stripped away by solar winds that howl through empty orbits. Some planets hold two tight, thick blankets of gas-trapping heat until their surfaces burn like ovens. But here, this world finds a middle place. A gentleness in the way air clings to rock and light feeds warmth into stone. You imagine standing on this young ground, feeling the first soft breezes brush your skin. The wind would carry hints of sulfur and ash, bitter to taste but rich in promise. With each passing age, the air would change, cooling, thickening, shifting with the tilt of the planet's spin and the warmth of its sun. Rain would wash carbon from the sky, burying it in stone, while life tiny, quiet life would begin to breathe out new gases, shifting the balance again. Your mind drifts forward in time. You see oceans swell and retreat, releasing vapor to the sky, feeding clouds that sail the winds. You see forests, not yet grown, waiting in the hush of possibility, ready to trade breath with the air. You sense how each leaf, each blade of grass yet to come, will be part of this atmosphere's learning, teaching it to hold oxygen, to cradle warmth, to soften storms. Up here, where the air grows thin, you feel the edge of the sky. Beyond this soft veil lies the silence of space, a cold expanse that would steal heat and breath in an instant. But this thin shroud stands guard, a patient keeper of warmth and life. It catches falling rocks, burning them to ash before they touch the ground. It filters rays that would scorch the surface. It carries water across continents, weaving clouds that rain where they are needed. You float through invisible jet streams, rivers of fast air that circled the planet's belly. These winds help spread warmth, balancing one side of the world. With the other, they push storms across oceans, shape seasons, and feed the quiet heartbeat of climate. Every gust, every swirl, is part of the atmosphere's memory, a lesson repeated with each rotation of the planet. Your breath slows as you listen to this memory. You see how breath itself is a cycle gases released by stone and fire, shaped by sunlight, fed by oceans, transformed by life. You understand how your own lungs mirror this breathing in, breathing out, trading carbon for oxygen in a quiet partnership with green leaves that will one day stretch toward the sun. High above, at the thin edge where air gives way to space, you drift near the invisible border that holds this blanket in place. Here, solar winds try to strip the atmosphere away, but the planet's magnetic field stands watch, a silent shield deflecting the sun's fierce particles. Without this shield, breath would slip through your fingers like water, lost forever. To the void, you sense how deeply connected everything is: stone, gas, sunlight, magnetism, and life waiting to emerge. You feel how winds carry seeds and warmth, how breath ties every living thing to sky and ground alike. To live here is to share the air with everything that has come before, and everything that will come after. Your mind floats downward again, touching mountain peaks where thin air brushes cold skin. You drift through valleys where winds gather warmth and scatter seeds. You glide over oceans that breathe vapor to the sky, weaving clouds like soft threads that circle the world. You sense how life is stitched into this fabric, every heartbeat tied to the atmosphere's patient hush. You rest in this thought. Breath is not just air, but memory, ancient volcanoes, old seas, the sigh of stone, the whisper of leaves. You carry it within you, your lungs exchanging atoms that once drifted in the first sighs of this world's restless ground. Each breath is part of the planet's long story, written in invisible spirals of wind and warmth. As you hover near the ground again, you feel the promise in this thin veil, how it will grow thicker, richer, more alive with each passing age. You sense the hush of forests yet to rise, the soft chatter of rivers yet to carve stone, the warmth of sunlight caught in green leaves that will one day trade their breath with yours. You drift over a young, silent world where stone stretches, unbroken in all directions. The land is raw and waiting, a canvas of dark rock and pale dust, cracked and dry beneath a sky that holds a secret in its breath. You hover just above this barren plain, feeling the hush that lingers here, the calm before the first drop falls dot above. The air gathers itself into a gentle promise. Moisture lifts from warm seas far away, carried by winds that wander across empty expanses. Tiny droplets cling to particles of dust in the sky, clumping together like whispered thoughts drifting toward a shared dream. Clouds form pale, soft, and swollen with the weight of what they carry. You watch them thicken and darken, pregnant with the first rain this land has ever known. The sky, once so bright and empty, becomes a cradle of water waiting to be born. You feel the hush deepen as if the rocks below hold their breath, sensing that something is about to change forever. A single drop breaks free, slipping from the edge of a cloud like a tear. It falls, alone at first, through layers of cool air, growing heavier as it collects more of itself along the way. You follow its descent, imagining the way the drop trembles, holding its shape against the wind until it lands with a soft, almost unheard kiss on the stone below. That first drop vanishes into dust, but its promise remains. Others follow, shy drops at first, scattered here and there. Then more, a gentle shower that darkens the rock, making veins of wetness that snake across the plain. The land seems to sigh beneath this quiet touch, as if it has waited an eternity for this simple gift. The rain falls in a steady rhythm now, a soft drumming that taps out a lullaby for sleeping earth. You listen to the tiny percussion, each drop a note, each splash a word in a language older than any spoken tongue. Water and stone begin a conversation that will last eons. Rivulets form in shallow grooves, tracing paths through the ancient dust. Little by little, the rain gathers strength, carving fine lines into rock that has never felt such tenderness. What begins as a trickle grows into thin streams that weave like silver threads over grey plains. The streams meet and merge, braiding into rivulets that will someday become rivers. You drift closer to the wet stone, feeling how the water seeps into cracks and hollows, softening sharp edges, carrying away grains of grit. Each tiny movement shifts the land's shape, not all at once, but drop by drop, a gentle sculpting that time alone can measure. In this water, you sense the seed of life's arrival. The rain dissolves minerals from the rock, carrying them into pools and puddles that glisten under a clearing sky. These tiny puddles become tiny laboratories where elements meet and mingle, sharing whispers of what they could become together. You imagine the first fragile chains of molecules forming here, sparked by the energy of sun and lightning, fed by minerals the rain has freed. You see how these pools might cradle the beginnings of something more than stone and water, something that will wriggle and grow and reach for warmth. But for now, the rain simply falls. You feel its cool touch on your skin, cleansing the dust that clings to your mind. You watch how it pools in hollows, gathers in cracks, seeps into the deepest places in the rock. The land drinks slowly, greedily, grateful for this quiet visitor, where the water flows, new textures appear, channels deepen, rocks break apart where water freezes and thaws. Over countless seasons, tiny rivers become wide valleys, and dry plains become lush with the promise of what will come next. The sky, spent for now, begins to clear. Soft light breaks through ragged clouds, glinting on fresh puddles that dot the sleeping ground. You see your reflection in one small pool, the shape of your curiosity hovering over this young world. You feel how rain leaves behind not just wetness, but possibility. Above the plain, the clouds drift on, carrying their moisture to other lands that wait in patient silence. The wind hums through empty gullies, where someday reeds might grow, where frogs might croak under the cover of night. You hear the distant echo of what could be forests, rivers, living things that will thank this rain for smoothing the stone and feeding the first stirrings of life. You move with the runoff, following the water as it trickles into new channels, carrying bits of rock and specks of dust to low places where pools will gather. You see how these gathered pools connect like thoughts across a dreaming mind. They promise that change is slow but sure, written in droplets and carried by the flow in this soft rain. You understand how worlds are softened and shaped by simple touches repeated without haste. It is not force that transforms the land, but patience and persistence, a lesson whispered in the quiet patter of water on stone. You listen as the last drops fall, tapping out a final note on a darkened boulder. The ground glistens under your gaze, darker and richer than before. You sense that under this wet skin, something waits, seeds of life stirring in tiny pools, minerals dissolving, molecules drifting together in secret dances. The air is fresh and calm again. You breathe in this quiet, tasting the promise it carries. You know this is only the beginning. Water has woken the stone, carving paths that lead to something more. The plain, once dry and empty, now holds pockets of liquid memory. You drift higher, tracing the thin, shining lines where streams have begun their gentle cut across the land. Each stream hums a lullaby to the rock it touches, a promise that no shape stays unchanged forever. In the hush that follows the rain, you feel the world listening, waiting for what comes next. You drift down, closer to the young earth's ancient seas, where warmth and water cradle the restless fragments of stardust. Your body becomes weightless, sinking through currents that carry memories of volcanoes, comets, and sunlight scattered across the restless waves. Each droplet surrounds you like a soft cradle, holding stories that began in dying stars and now swirl together in a new experiment of chance and time. You sense the ocean's surface above you, kissed by the sun's gentle rays that slip through waves and scatter among drifting particles. The warmth stirs the water, setting molecules into a quiet frenzy. Tiny fragments of carbon and hydrogen meet each other in delicate collisions, pulled together by invisible forces. These building blocks have traveled far, born in stellar hearts, carried by ancient comets, and dissolved into these salty depths, where they now wait for something more. You drift alongside these drifting pieces, feeling how they move with purpose they do not yet understand. Simple chains of atoms brush against each other and bind. Molecules fold and twist like origami shaped by the push and pull of electric whispers. Each new shape becomes a tiny experiment. Some break apart. Some drift aimlessly, but a few stay intact. Stubborn in their survival. Near you, pools of warmth rise from deep beneath the ocean floor. Vents hidden in darkness exhale minerals and heat, stirring the cold water into dancing plumes. In these hidden pockets, minerals dissolve, swirl, and cling to one another. You watch the boundary where hot and cold mingle, a quiet edge where the impossible becomes possible. Here, chemicals align, drawn together by currents and chance, creating fragile spirals of potential. Your mind imagines how, in these tiny spirals, the first whispers of life begin. Molecules arrange themselves into patterns that remember how to copy. One fragment folds around another, coaxing it to mirror its shape. A simple pattern becomes a chain becomes a cycle becomes a memory of itself. Each repetition is an echo, a heartbeat in the silence of stone and salt water. You feel how light, too, lends its touch to this hidden cradle. Sunlight strikes the surface, warms the shallows, fuels reactions that feed the restless molecules. Energy from ancient starlight passes into these tiny loops, giving them reason to stay, to grow, to reach for the next moment. In the hush of the ocean, warmth and minerals and light braid themselves together into a fragile promise. You drift closer to the growing shapes, noticing how some patterns wrap themselves in delicate shells. Little bubbles of fat form tiny safe harbors, protecting the fragile dancers inside. You watch as these bubbles drift, collide, and sometimes merge, exchanging their secrets in brief, silent conversations. Inside these early cells, chaos finds a shape, a boundary, a home for dreams that do not yet know they are dreams. Your mind moves outward, sensing how countless experiments unfold across the restless sea. Not every bubble survives. Many break apart, spilling their patterns into the water, feeding the next attempt. Some cling together long enough to divide, share, and begin again. Slowly, through countless failures and gentle accidents, A few cells learn how to keep themselves whole. These first cells do not think, do not feel as you do, yet they hold a memory of fire and starlight, a pulse that once belonged to supernovas and drifting dust. Inside them, simple instructions repeat like a quiet chant. Build, copy, divide, survive. They drift in warm shallows, nestle in shadows near vents, cling to rocks, float in tide pools. Everywhere, stardust folds into new forms, testing the soft boundary between chemistry and breath. You sense the passage of time, slow and patient as the turning earth. The sun rises and falls over endless days, feeding warmth to shallow pools. Lightning splits the sky, sending sparks into waiting waters, stirring the soup of restless elements. With each storm, each warm tide, new patterns awaken. Some fade into silence. Others hold on, adding layers of complexity like coral growing grain by grain. Your thoughts drift through these countless attempts, feeling the ocean's soft persistence. The sea is a mother, patient and generous, willing to hold failure and possibility in the same tide. The warmth of the sun, the minerals from stone, the energy of storms, all conspire to nurture these tiny, trembling beginnings. You wonder how these first cells sense their world. They do not see or hear, yet they react, shifting shape when touched by heat or salt, drifting toward the places where food and warmth gather. Within their fragile membranes, molecules shuttle back and forth, carrying energy, building walls, breaking old shapes into new ones. This dance is so small you could pass through it like mist, yet its pattern is the first heartbeat of something more. Your mind traces how these simple cells feed the next dream. Some begin to gather sunlight directly, capturing its warmth in greenish pigments that will someday paint forests and fields. Others learn to share clusters of cells drift together, swapping secrets that make survival easier. In these gatherings, the idea of community is born, written not in thought but in strands of molecule and membrane. Time flows onward in waves you cannot see, each heartbeat of the young earth giving the cells another chance to thrive. You imagine how, with each passing age, these tiny specks will change the ocean's breath, filling it with bubbles of gas that will someday become air. They will build reefs of stone, layers upon layers of life's signature pressed into rock. They will become the ancestors of every leaf, every branch, every heartbeat that comes after. You drift above these restless shallows, feeling the hush between waves and rock. Here, stardust finds its courage to remember how to grow, how to breathe, how to hope for a next moment. You listen to the hush of ancient tides, the soft murmurs of molecules folding into one another. It is the gentlest of miracles, the way dead dust becomes a living whisper above you. Sunlight dances on the water's surface, reminding you how everything begins again and again. The warmth you felt in the heart of stars now rests in these fragile shapes, holding the memory of distant fire in tiny spirals of possibility. The first cells drift on currents that carry them to new places, spreading the hope that life might root itself deeper, hold tighter, dream wider. You sense how all that is alive now. Trees, creatures, your own body carries this same ancient story, the same carbon, the same restless atoms, the same stubborn dance that refuses to fade. Stardust breathes in you as it breathes in the tiny cells drifting beneath these waves. As you float in this quiet ocean cradle, you wonder what these first cells will dream next, how they will gather together, trade gifts of function and form, and rise from single cells into something more. Your mind settles onto a young world's surface, warm beneath the light of a new sun. You feel the soft exhale of ancient volcanoes, breathing gases into a sky that was once empty and still. Rains begin, slow at first, falling on warm stone, and gathering into rivulets that snake down into basins, pooling into the first oceans that reflect starlight back into the night. In this hush, you sense how the minerals and elements, born from old stars and gathered by gravity's patient pull, meet the restless touch of water. Droplets dissolve rock, carrying nutrients in gentle currents. Pools become tiny laboratories, shallow and sunlit, stirred by wind and warmed by day. In these simple broths, molecules drift and collide, not unlike the dust grains that gathered to build mountains and plains. Here, too, the universe recycles itself, chaos shaping into something that stirs, splits, and begins to breathe in its own secret way. You drift through eons, as if they are soft waves. What was only chemistry becomes something more. You watch how simple cells learn to feed on sunlight and minerals, weaving strands of energy into delicate threads of life. Tiny forms multiply in silent bursts beneath shallow seas. They build reefs of stone and towers of coral, weaving calcium into underwater cathedrals. Each breath they take changes the air above, filling it with oxygen that drifts out over coasts, feeding future forests not yet imagined. Continents shift beneath you, never still. Slow drifts of crust grind together. Mountains rise, rivers carve paths down their flanks. Each shift makes new habitats, new chances for life to experiment with form and color. You watch green moss creep across bare rock, a patient paintbrush filling gray stone with soft emerald. Ferns rise where volcanoes once raged. Forests whisper where once there was barren plain. You drift through the leaves, feeling the hush of photosynthesis, sunlight turned into sugar, the taste of life sweetening the air. Animals appear, soft shapes at first, testing new ways to move and breathe. Fins become limbs. Limbs learn to crawl from water to land. You watch tiny creatures climb into trees, leap between branches, swim through the sky on wings shaped by the wind itself. Each shape a question the planet asks and answers in the hush of deep time. Life tries, fails, rises again. You feel how extinction is not an end but a clearing, making space for something new to unfurl and take root. Mass extinctions come like slow sighs. An asteroid falls. Fire sweeps the land. Ash darkens skies. Oceans turn acid. Creatures vanish into stone memories, buried deep in cliffs and canyons. Yet in the dark, in cracks and sheltered pools, life holds on like a whisper. Small survivors stir when the fires fade, growing bolder as light returns. Forests creep back, oceans brighten. New songs fill the air where old ones fell silent. You drift through this cycle without fear, knowing how death feeds life, how endings nourish beginnings. Your mind hovers over the drifting plates of countenance. You feel Africa tug against Asia, how mountain ranges buckle skyward in slow collisions that echo the birth of planets long ago. Rivers shift their courses, carving new canyons, carrying stories in grains of silt. Deserts bloom for a season, then rest beneath sands that remember ancient seas. Every landscape is temporary yet timeless, a breath held and released in stone and wind. You feel yourself growing tender toward these hidden rhythms, the way a seed waits in darkness for rain, the way a glacier grinds mountains to soil that will feed forests in some far tomorrow. You imagine standing on an ancient shore, watching tides pull and push life onto new paths, each wave carrying tiny swimmers who may become fish, who may learn to breathe air, who may one day look up at the stars and wonder where they began. You sense how even you are part of this quiet patience, your bones made of minerals once scattered in clouds of cosmic ash, your breath tied to the forests that learned to turn sunlight into food and air. Inside you, the story continues. Cells divide, repair, adapt. Thoughts bloom like coral colonies, each one a small living testament to the deep memory of dust and fire and ocean. The earth turns beneath you, spinning its long, slow song. Life rises, folds back, and rises again in forms so varied you can never see them all at once. You drift through the murmur of insects in the underbrush, the cry of birds across open plains, the hush of whales beneath rolling waves. You see footprints pressed into mud that hardens to stone, fossils waiting to be found by hands that have only just learned to wander. In this hush, you feel the weight of time not as a burden but as a cradle, holding every shape of life that has come and gone. Every extinction leaves behind seeds. Every seed waits for warmth, for rain, for the right moment to open again. There is no hurry here. No single form holds the whole dream. Stardust learns to dream in countless shapes, and each dream feeds the next dot. And now, drifting with countenance that still wander, you listen to the world beneath your feet, shifting plates, deep magma, oceans restless with tides. You sense how these forces shape not just land and life, but stories yet to be told in echoes of lava and wind. Somewhere, beneath this soft turning, new minerals wait to rise to the surface. Elements that once floated as cosmic dust lie buried, waiting to be unearthed, waiting to fuel questions and journeys that have not yet begun. You let your breath follow the slow drift of mountains, the hush of forests rising where stone once ruled, the whisper of oceans remembering stardust. And as you settle into this endless patience, you wonder where the next journey will lead. Perhaps down into the hidden seams of rock and ore, where ancient metals sleep in the dark, waiting for curious hands to find them, waiting to be lifted once more into the light. You rest in the hush of warm shallows, your body half held by water, half cradled by muddy earth. You feel the cool kiss of waves against your skin and the soft pull of gravity urging you forward, up onto the edge, where ocean yields to land. The air tastes different here, heavier with warmth, thinner with oxygen waiting to fill lungs that once only knew the hush of currents. You look back through your mind's tide, drifting to when life first stirred in the ancient seas, tiny cells drifting like plankton, clusters finding ways to weave themselves together, simple shapes learning to swim, to breathe dissolved air, to feed on sunlight trickling down through the blue-green world. For billions of years, the ocean was enough, a gentle cradle of salt and sun and drifting life. But currents carry more than salt. They carry chance and change. You feel the tug that drew some creatures closer to the edge, the shallow pools, where tides trapped them for hours, where air pressed gently against skin that learned to taste it. Fins stiffened, gills shared their burden with lungs forming from air-filled pockets. Limbs, soft at first, found strength to push, to drag, to lift. In this slow dance, you move forward with them, your body still slick with memory of the sea. You feel mud between your toes, the strange pull of dry earth beneath your belly. Each push forward is a promise that what was once water-breathing can now taste the sky. Your heartbeat drums with the rhythm of curiosity, a a soft question that asks what waits beyond the shore. The ocean sighs behind you, waves breaking gently on your trail. Ahead, the land is silent, patient, open. You see low plants hugging damp ground, the earliest mosses and ferns weaving green carpets where once there was only rock. Their roots split stone, feed on sunlight, invite rain to stay. In their shade, insects crawl, tiny pioneers that found wings before you found feet. You lift your gaze to the vast canopy of blue. You breathe deeply, lungs expanding in a new way, tasting air that carries scents of soil and leaf. There is no salt here, but there is promise, the promise of places to crawl, to climb, to shelter beneath broad leaves that will one day grow into forests so wide they hum with wind like a living ocean. Your limbs tire quickly on land. Muscles built for swimming must learn to hold weight. Bones thicken, joints shift, balance finds new rules. You rest often, half in water, half on shore, feeling how evolution never rushes but always moves. With each generation, gills shrink. Lungs grow, fins flatten into sturdy limbs. Eyes adjust to brighter light. Ears tune to sounds that ripple through air instead of water. You drift through the ages now, watching small creatures become larger, braver, hungrier for dry ground. Some crawl only a few steps before slipping back into safe depths. Others linger longer, tasting insects, resting in sun-dappled pools, waiting for rains to carry them further inland. They leave trails in soft mud, footprints that will turn. 2 fossils, a record of life's first bold steps onto new worlds. Breathe with them. Feel your chest swell with each inhale, the new gift of air-feeding muscles once fed by water alone. You sense the challenge. Air dries skin meant for currents. So scales thicken, slime coats fade, skin learns to hold moisture in. The sun warms. Your back, a gentle fire that promises energy to grow, to heal, to explore. Around you, early forests stretch their green fingers upward. Ferns and towering horsetails shade the damp earth. Insects drone lazily in shafts of sunlight, wings catching light like stained glass. Some grow large dragonflies the size of your hand, humming through thick air rich with oxygen from forests breathing out what they drink in. These trees are young compared to the stone beneath them, yet old enough to cradle your first steps.